Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. It's Sam with another quick-ish video for you. It should be quick-ish, maybe 15 minutes. I don't know. Nothing super special to announce today. Still working on some things for the next few weeks, trying to get events planned and such like that. Actually, there was an event I'll tell you about at the end of the video, hopefully, that I just posted on my Facebook wall. It's happening next Friday. But today, I'm just gonna do a quick book review discussion. I mentioned last month maybe, that I want, a good writer must also be a good reader, and I wanted to start talking to you about some of the books I'm reading because I'm trying to read at least one fiction book a month and trying to do one fiction and one nonfiction a month, and so I'm in the midst of that now. Haven't finished this book yet. I'll tell you about it in a moment. Well, you can already see what it is from the video title probably, but yeah. So I want to ask everyone out there, what are you reading these days? What books are you reading? And how will it influence your writing? Okay, good writer must be a good reader. What are you reading? How will it influence your writing? Let me answer that question. I am reading Cormac McCarthy's The Road. Okay, I mentioned this maybe a month ago. I don't know, in one of my videos. It's been on my to read list for a long time. I mean, a lot of books have. I've known about this one since college, and everyone's told me like, oh, you need to read it, and I'm finally getting around to it. Wish I got into it earlier. I'm only about halfway through. I've been reading it, maybe 20 pages or so a night. I'm really enjoying it so far for the most part. I will tell you in just a moment things I liked about it and things I didn't like about it. And now remember, this is an unfinished impression because I'm only about halfway through. But I actually do know how it ends because I've heard some spoilers. I won't talk about spoilers till the end, so I'll give you a chance before the end if to jump off if you want to. But let me tell you the things I liked less about it, things I liked more about it, what I'm learning from this, and how we can apply these things possibly to our writing as writers. For those of us who are still writers, like me, like many of you out there. I'll tell you what I didn't like first because I think it's actually not that much, and I want to spend more time talking about what I did like, and also that'll kind of allow me to get the spoilers at the end. Um, Parts I don't like of this, or just aspects of it that I'm not as big a fan of. You can't get away in the discussion of McCarthy, I guess, from his writing style. I mentioned that in my video on grammar about how it's an unconventional writing style, um, very minimalistic, very, I guess, yeah, unstructured almost. And I mean, for the most part, it doesn't like here. Maybe I can show you just a little bit. If I can hold up the camera, like he doesn't even have quotation marks. Like at the very top of the page there, there's some dialogue. It's spoken, but there's not any speaker tags or quotation marks. Very minimalistic sentences. Not a whole lot of commas. I checked. I made sure that and there are some commas in there, but not a whole lot. He uses sentence fragments, as I mentioned before in my other video. He does not intentionally, obviously. I mean, he's doing that to create a certain effect intentionally. He's not just being lazy and not including good grammar because he wants to, but he's trying to create a certain effect. And for the most part, I think it works. I mean, it helps him highlight. I guess it helps the reader feel like they're in the action, and it just kind of avoids the trappings of a lot of exposition, and it focuses on the things he wants to focus on, like the characters and the dialogue and the action, and to some extent the setting, but it doesn't go off on a lot of other extraneous description. I could probably learn a thing or two from him, or look at some of us who are wordy. For the most part, it doesn't bother me. This is the second book I've read by him, and the other one had the same kind of writing style too. For the most part, it doesn't bother me. But there are times when I wish he would do a little bit more. For one thing, there's no chapter divisions in this book. I'm always trying to divide up my books by chapters just because like I give myself a rough schedule for reading just to make sure I stay on track. And I'm like, okay, how many chapters are in it? And then like, there's no chapter divisions. It's about 280 pages, a little less than 300. So I kind of divided up that way. But I'm like, there's no chapter divisions. There are a lot of scene breaks. Like, again, you see the scene breaks just here, like between, blank space between scenes. Sometimes the scenes are only a page or two long, or a paragraph long. So there's a lot of different scene breaks, but no chapter divisions. So that's interesting. Other thing is with the dialogue, I guess, or with the lack of speaker tags and the lack of even giving the characters names. there's a lot of um, it does get confusing sometimes. Usually I can understand it, but sometimes I can't. I should have mentioned this already. I assume people were familiar with it. If I didn't mention this already, it's a story of a man and a boy traveling together, a father and a son, um, in basically post-apocalyptic America. They didn't explain what happened because he didn't give all that background, but we assume it's nuclear holocaust or something like that. Everything is burnt. It keeps talking about there's ash everywhere, and it's just a father and a son who are not given names at all. They're just referred to as the man and the boy. Um, and it's them just traveling through post-apocalyptic America, trying to survive, that kind of thing. Um, and again, so usually the dialogue, it's not hard for me to tell. I mean, it's the man and the boy. I mean, there's two of them. I mean, even with the minimalistic style, you can tell who's speaking. But like a few times they meet other characters. One time he met another man, and there was this long exchange. And since they don't have names, it just refers to them both as the man. And I was like, okay, well, who's talking here in this long exchange? And I read it like halfway and realized I had been reading it wrong. I thought the other person was speaking. I had the speaker switched in my mind, so I had to go back and read it and reread it to make sure I was reading it right the first time, or the second time. So I mean, little things like that. Yeah, I realize he's going for a style. I'd say maybe 80 to 90% of the time it works for me. A few times it hasn't worked, and I just said, hey, that's pay more attention, or just like, okay, Cormac, like you could give us a little bit to work with here. He doesn't give much backstory or exposition either. He gives a little bit. A few of the sections have been flashbacks, like to the man and their life before, or I guess his wife before she died. I don't think it's a spoiler because everyone knows in a post-apocalypse setting. I mean, it's the idea is they're just two survivors. Most everyone else is dead. So it gave a few flashbacks that help explain how they got there, but not many. I get the style works for him. I get it's what he's known for, and he's creating an intentional effect. I could sometimes use a little bit more help understanding things, but overall, that hasn't ruined the story for me. Maybe distracts here or there a time or two, but overall, doesn't ruin it for me. So that's what I disliked. I mean, I'm only halfway through it, but so far I haven't disliked much. It's just minor critiques of the style. I want to talk more about what I like here. Um, what's interesting to me in the story, what I've enjoyed about it. And I will say, well, a lot of things, but it makes good use of tropes, of like the man and the boy being the tropes and the apocalypse being tropes and things like that. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Tropes, I mean, if you're a writer or a reader, you probably know what I mean by that. Like archetypes or common themes or common character types that appear a lot in stories. And I know we sometimes criticize tropes as being like, oh, it's just a trope. Um, but I've seen a meme that says like criticizing a story because it has tropes in it. It's kind of like criticizing a tree for being made of wood. It's like stories are made of tropes. Yes, sometimes they're done better or sometimes they're done worse. Um, but it's not bad for a story to have tropes in it. So in this case, I think the tropes for me were a good thing. Um, it's like so again. I mean, he doesn't give the background. I mean, he doesn't give names or like long histories of the backstory or of the characters, and he doesn't say, oh, this is the man Bob Smith or whatever who had this life before the apocalypse. Um, he just goes in there and tells you like what's going on in the action. But because of the tropes, I felt connected to the characters already. I felt they were familiar because I've read other stories like this. So that's when I say like for me the tropes are a good thing. They help bring familiarity and context when there's not a lot of context spelled out in the book. Um, this book makes me think of like things like The Walking Dead, which it's I've watched the show and read the comics, um, and yes, there's a lot of characters and a lot that happens, but the main character is Rick, the tough, strong leader who's helping everyone survive, and he has a son, Carl, who's at the beginning of the series, he's probably like a little kid. Over time, he grows into a young man. Um, but yeah, it's Rick and Carl, so a son and a dad. So I can feel like that. It also made me think of like Logan, the movie Logan about Wolverine. Where he was taking care of a young girl, but kind of this idea of a tough guy caring for a child on a post-apocalyptic journey. Actually, the movie wasn't post-apocalyptic. I don't think it was loosely based on a comic book storyline called Old Man Logan that was dystopian, apocalyptic. But the movie Logan still had them going across like desert wastelands and things like that. This kind of this feel of like lawless society, like away from civilization. So it felt familiar, and it made me think of things like The Mandalorian. If you've watched that show in the past couple of years, of again tough, strong man, warrior guy, keeping people safe, keeping a child safe across the desert wasteland, across the lawless reaches of society. And so what I'm saying is like for me, when it's done well, I enjoy connecting a story to these other stories that I'm familiar with, even if not all of them are high literature. It's part of how I understand stories is to, I guess, connect it to things I'm familiar with. Maybe a lot of us do that. Maybe I do it more overtly or more consciously because I'm an English major, or I was an English major, and I studied stories for a while there. But like, even with no introduction, even with no backstory or whatever, I felt like I knew these characters already. They're just the man and the boy, but to me, like other things I've read helped me fill in those gaps. So like, I felt like, yeah, I know this man. He's a tough man. He's a strong man. I mean, he's maybe gruff. He has a hard time showing emotion overtly, but he'll do anything he can to keep his son safe. He's seen some hard things. He's been weathered by what he's experienced already. But he's trying to make it as far as he can. Like I felt like I knew that character already, even though I hadn't read much of this book. And the boy, I'm like, yeah, I mean, he's a little boy. He's hopeful. He doesn't understand everything that's going on, but now that he's lived in the apocalypse for a little while at least, he's probably seen more than some kids have, and so I felt like I could understand those characters, and so just having the tropes there helped me to understand them. I couldn't really tell you, I guess, what is a good usage of tropes versus a bad usage. I'm not sure if I could give a definition of that. Even if I was asked to, because a lot of times it's just gut feeling. It's just like when you see it. I mean, we know there are overuses of tropes too, and stories that don't do it well. I'm not sure I can give a concise definition right now of which is which. But for me, this one did well. It shows us the tropes, it includes the tropes without relying too heavily on them, and it includes them in a way that it feels familiar, and it works for the story. So it made me think of those other stories. Even the setting too, and some of the themes. Again, it's post-apocalyptic. It's this desert, barren wasteland kind of thing. Like everything is ash. There are houses and stuff, and they find out like a bunker, and they find the ruins of civilization, but it's like ashes covering everything. And again, I've read and watched The Walking Dead for a long time, and I'm like, everything here is making me think of The Walking Dead. Okay, there's not zombies, of course, but like almost everything else. And I've always said it, if you've watched Walking Dead at all or read it, the author has said this, and I've kind of said this too. I think it's less about zombies per se. That's kind of the vehicle they use, but it's more about the survivors and their struggle to survive, and what society looks like and what human nature looks like in a broken down world. And that's the impression I'm getting from this book too. So I'm saying this of both The Road and The Walking Dead. It's about the survivors and their struggle to survive, and what they'll do to survive in this post-apocalyptic wasteland. Foraging for rations, putting up shelter, that kind of thing. They do meet other survivors once in a while, and because society is broken down and there's no law, there's no government, it's kind of brought out the worst in human nature. And so when they meet a survivor, they have to be mistrustful of them, and often other people will kill or whatever in order to take someone else's food. They meet a group of people who had basically people captured in a cellar or something, and it was implied that they were cannibals. They were going to eat the other people because not the main characters, but whoever had the people trapped were eating them just to survive because they didn't have any other food source. That happened in The Walking Dead too. So things like this make me think of, I guess, familiar stories to me that are, I'm like, yeah, I can connect to this. Yes, I do think if we face an apocalypse like this, I think a lot of those things would happen, of just foraging for food and humans turning against each other and doing whatever they could to survive. It would be a lawless wasteland, among other things. Just incidentally, this was published in 2006. The Walking Dead show began in 2010, but the comics began in 2003. So the road was published kind of in the middle of there. I'm not suggesting that Cormac McCarthy read the Walking Dead comics, or that Robert Kirkman, the author of Walking Dead, read this book. I don't know, but I think they're both drawing on tropes that have existed longer than this, and on human nature and how those things would go too. So just that kind of familiarity worked well for me. So yeah, it is like a series of episodes. It is like I said, there's a lot of section breaks in it. At times, I guess it's going under the category of what I didn't like. At times, I feel like the episodes aren't connected. I mean, none of them like halfway through it, they're getting a little more connected. But there were some scenes where I felt like this could be placed somewhere else in the book, and it wouldn't make any difference because it didn't give much context or much connection. Now I feel like the plot is moving along more. But yeah, it's a man and a boy just traveling along in post-apocalyptic America, trying to survive. And I mean, the tropes that are there evoke emotion in us. Like, I'm a dad. I live in Texas, which is pretty much the Wild West. Not really. I'm in the DFW, so not really. But the first night I picked this up and started reading it, I got like 15 pages in, not very far, and I was just like, I want to go check on my son because I just want to hold him and make sure he's okay. I mean, he's fine. It's not like the apocalypse out here, but I just was like reading about like this tough man protecting his son, like makes me want to go check on my son. I didn't go and wake him up, but it evokes those emotions in us when good stories resonate with us. So that's the effect it's had on me, is to, one, make me think of other stories, two, make me think of my role as dad and my son. And so it's been a, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say a pleasant journey, because I mean it's a violent book. It's about the apocalypse. It's not all pleasant, but it's been a rewarding and fulfilling journey so far. Halfway through the book, got about halfway to go. Half more to go. I'll finish it maybe in a week, I hope. So that's where I am. Okay, I'm going to talk about spoilers in just a minute, and you may be saying, you're halfway through the book. How do you know about spoilers? I have had the ending spoiled for me because I read. I've interviewed her before on these live videos, but I read Dr. Karen Pryor's book on reading well, where she goes through different virtues or different classics of literature. I guess this is considered a classic kind of, or maybe a modern classic, being only a few years, being relatively new, but famous already. It won the Pulitzer Prize and everything. She talks about great books and what we can learn from them, like virtues we can learn from them. And so I read her analysis of The Road. So I have had the ending spoiled for me because she tells the ending in there. So even though I'm not at the end yet, I know at least one big thing that's going to happen. And that doesn't bother me too much, and I'll tell you why. One, I think I've heard Dr. Pryor say before, the difference between something like this. The difference between good and bad literature is that good literature isn't spoiled by spoilers. Like, in other words, even if you know the ending of the story, you can still enjoy the journey and enjoy the story. Two, it's a common ending that I could have predicted probably if I had tried to figure out the ending. It's one that I've seen in other stories like this. One that just feels fitting and not hard to guess based on the situation they're in. So I'm going to tell the ending, or what I know of it from not having read it yet. And I'm going to tell. And I'm going to connect it to the ending of some of those other works I mentioned too, like Walking Dead and Logan. So if you don't want spoilers for any of those things or for any things in general, now's the time to hop off. But if you're okay with that or don't mind it, again, these are, I think, predictable spoilers, and some of these, like, predictable-ish, and some of these things have been out for a while. So it's not going to be a big deal. But jump off if you want to. This is your warning. Otherwise, I'm going to talk about spoilers in about 5 seconds. Okay. So, from what I know from reading Dr. Pryor's book, this ends with the man dying and basically passing on his legacy to the boy. I'm not sure what that looks like yet. I haven't gotten there myself, but it's just, the idea of, I'm sure, some noble self-sacrificial death, and basically passing on his legacy to the boy, and the mentor, the man dies, but the boy survives and carries on the hope of humanity. And that seems like, I mean, again, I haven't read it yet because I heard that spoiler from someone else, but seems like an ending I could have guessed, and an ending that's fitting to me, because a lot of these other stories like this in the apocalypse are ending like that. So Walking Dead, the show is veered off from the comics. If you watch the show, this is not like the show is, but the comics finally ended a couple years ago in 2019, and the comics ended. Rick died. Rick, the main character, the sheriff you see on the ads of the show. He finally died. He passed his legacy on to his son Carl. The last issue of the comics was Carl, like some years later, just living his life in a rebuilt society. I mean, I guess the rebuilding of civilization as much as you could have in when zombies are still a reality of life. Yeah, so that ended kind of fittingly also. The main character basically did his work, did what he could to help everyone survive. You know, not just his son, but civilization also. And once that was over, the writer killed him off and gave him a heroic death when we saw that his son survived. Logan, the movie, ended the same way. It was Hugh Jackman's exit to the character. It was his farewell to the characters and the franchise. So I mean, he died. They cut him off in a great epic way. He preserved the life of his daughter, or it was his clone, or whatever in the movie, Laura. But basically, he passed on his life or his legacy to her. And I'm realizing, I'm a superhero fan. A lot of superhero movies or superhero franchises that seem to be ending are doing like these days. It's been 2 years since Avengers Endgame. I think everyone who wants to see it has seen it by now. But Tony Stark, they gave him a family, they gave him a daughter, they gave him something a way to carry on his legacy. Like he's finished his mission. Then they gave him a noble sacrificial death. Arrow in the Arrowverse, after 8 seasons, same thing. Oliver Queen. They gave him a family. They gave him a son and daughter. He had kept the city safe. He had finished his mission. They gave him a noble sacrificial death. So it feels fitting. Mandalorian. We're only 2 seasons in. So, but if in 3 years or 5 years or however many more seasons of that we get, if it ends the same way, well then you heard it here first. I'm calling it now. Mandalorian will end. I don't know, but maybe. Mandalorian will end with Mando sacrificing himself in some great heroic way and passing his legacy on to baby Grogu and making sure Grogu lives and others are safe. I don't know what I'm calling it now. So anyway, it just seems like a fitting ending. It seems like a way that a lot of good stories end on a heroic note, a sad and tragic but heroic note of giving the hero a good, solid ending, and making us feel things, making us feel sad, but also making us feel hope and fulfillment and catharsis, even in that moment of sacrificial death and noble death of passing your life and your legacy onto others. So yeah, I'm looking forward to actually reading the ending so I can talk about it and feel how it happens rather than just talking about it from hearing it secondhand. Yeah, it's a good story, a fitting ending that makes sense of the story. And yeah, good book overall. I mean, it's entertaining. It does more than that. Also, I mean, there's a quote that says a good book will be more than entertaining, must not be less. But I'm enjoying it as well as analyzing it and things like that too. So I recommend it. Read The Road. See what you can apply from it to your own writing. See if you like McCarthy's style or not. Some people do, some people don't. See if it works for you. But yeah. Apply these things to your own writing. I would say tropes in a good way, like tropes in a way that make people feel familiar and make people feel emotions. And then the catharsis of a heroic ending are things that hopefully I can apply to my own writing, and maybe you can too. Okay, so I hope that was helpful to you. Really quick, in the last, I know I went over the time I was expecting to have. I didn't have time today because I'm not at work today. Really quick announcement. Next Friday, the 18th, it's not Bandcamp Friday, but Bandcamp is doing a fundraiser in honor of Juneteenth, which is June 19th, but they're doing it on Friday the 18th. So next Friday, a portion of all your proceeds, if you buy anything from Bandcamp, a portion of your proceeds will go to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. So you can name your price to download Fractured Heroes at fracturedheroes.bandcamp.com, and a portion of your purchase will go to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, which, from what I can tell, is a good cause, doing good work in the world, especially for underprivileged and colored communities. I just now created an event. It's there on my Facebook page, Samuel N. Harris of Bandcamp download for Juneteenth, and I'll plan to do a video on that day too, and maybe do a live reading from the story. But I want to make you aware of that for next Friday the 18th. Check my page, Samuel N. Harris, and the event there for more details. And until then, keep reading, keep writing, and enjoy your week. Thanks for watching. Bye.